Hello, my name is Sophie and welcome back to my channel. Today I'll be telling you about the books I finished in October, except my husband is playing video games with his best friend on the Xbox downstairs, so if you hear any random screaming, no one is in danger except his Xbox, which might get thrown out the window. Either way, I'm filming this a little bit in advance, so at this point in the month I have finished 6 books, but I'm currently in the middle of 3 others. I never normally read 3 books at once, but I've got 1 audiobook, 1 physical book and 1 non-fiction, so they're quite easy to keep separate in my brain. So I'm going to take you through the books that I definitely finished, and then I'll give you a little summary of the books that I'm hoping to finish by the end of the month. So the wrap up this month is somewhere between 6 and 8 books. Do with that information what you will. The first book I finished was a book that I started in September and didn't quite finish in time for the end of the month, and that is The Pairing by Casey McQuiston. I rated this 3.5 stars, I think. Yes, 3.5. I thought this was fine. I definitely think it falls more into the erotica genre than romance, because the kind of sexual activities of the main couple are more relevant to the plot than in a standard romance book, I think. But yeah, generally I just found the characters a little bit eccentric. I just didn't love it. It got the extra 0.5 because I did like reading from Kit's perspective in the second half of the book. I think it's really hard with Casey McQuiston because the first book of theirs that I read was Red, White and Royal Blue, and that is one of my favourite books of all time. Then I was let down by One Last Stop, and this just wasn't. I think when Red, White and Royal Blue is one of my favourite books of all time, it's hard to live up to that. I'm not necessarily recommending it, definitely not recommending it as a romance, but if you read the premise and it sounds like something you're interested in, give it a go. Do you want this copy? You can have it. This is the Afterlight special edition version. Then we had a book from my 24 in 2024 list, and this was a book that I bought when I was a teenager. I think I read it at the time and I wanted to reread it to ascertain whether I still wanted to keep it in my collection, and that book is 0.4 by Mike Lancaster, and I rated this 4 stars. I thought this was brilliant. It's a kind of contemporary sci-fi that almost has a dystopian feel, and it's very accessible sci-fi. It's not very like science heavy. It's just, yeah, I would argue it's more dystopian than sci-fi, but it's a really interesting concept and a really fun execution. I thought even though it's YA and it's narrated from the point of view of a teenager, it doesn't have the same, I want to say eccentricities again, but I don't, like the melodramatic reactions that teenagers have, not through like, not in a critical way, but just in a way that, you know, they're still learning how to be human and manage their emotions and stuff. It felt very controlled, and I think the formatting was also really interesting because the main character has recorded their story on a tape recorder, and then there's little kind of side notes and annotations because the tapes are being treated as like an artifact which is being analysed by you know, experts in the future. It's almost mixed media, but almost mixed in terms of the like old-fashioned technologies being used, like tape recorders and books. I mean, the first page says, warning, this data storage unit or book has been designed to reprogram the human brain, allowing it to replicate the lost art that was once called reading. It is a simple adjustment and there will be no negative or harmful effects from the process. And then it goes on to explain reading, and it's just really interesting. Yeah, I think this is really, really fun, and I would genuinely thoroughly recommend this one, especially because it's also really short and the writing style is really fast paced, so you can get through this one quite quickly. It's less than 300 pages, so if you're a bit behind on your reading goal, this might be one to catch up on. I think it's also marketed as Human 0.4, so if you do want to read it and you can't find it by looking for 0.4, try looking for Human 0.4. From there, I got an audiobook coming from the library, and that was Gleam by Raven Kennedy, which is the 3rd book in the Plated Prisoner series. And this is the book that makes me understand the hype for the Plated Prisoner series. I get it now. I cared about the characters, there was some actual plot, and there actually felt like there was stakes. It was so much fun. It was long, but it was a book that I felt like I was genuinely excited to get back to reading. I predominantly listen to audiobooks when I'm driving, and it was getting to the point where I was like, well, when am I next driving? Where can I go to listen to more of this book? And I really, really enjoyed it. The next audiobook isn't available at my library, but I have used one of my audiobook credits. I do have Glow, and I will be listening to it at some point. and I'm actually quite excited about it. Then I read another book from my 24 and 2024 list. This is a non-fiction book called The Life-Changing Magic of Not Giving a Fuck, and I rated this one 3.5 stars as well. I genuinely think I'd have enjoyed this more if I read this before I read The Subtle Art of Not Giving a Fuck, which I read last year. I loved that book. I don't tend to rate non-fiction, but I rated that one 5 stars because I loved it so much and I thought the principles were so well described. And this book essentially has the same principles, but I just didn't connect to the writing style as much. It was a nice writing style. It was very easy to read, very quick to get through. I think I managed to read this whole thing in like 5 days, which is quite quick for me. It's less than 200 pages. The narrative style is quite fun, but yeah, I just didn't quite vibe with this as much as I vibed with The Subtle Art of Not Giving a Fuck. I'm not going to rush to read her other book. Then another book that I listened to as an audiobook, Can't Spell Treason Without Tea by Rebecca Thorne. This is the first book in the Tomes and Tea series, and it was originally indie published in, I want to say 2022, and it's now been traditionally published. I got the special Waterstones edition. I pre-ordered this when it came out in, I want to say March or April, and I only got around to reading it because its sequel has now been traditionally published, but we'll get to that later. I did finish reading this. I rated this one 4 stars as well. It was super fun. It was cozy fantasy, but it actually had a plot and some stakes. So whilst the setting was very cozy and the characters were really sweet, there was still a plot and some, you know, a threat of danger and some magic and some dragons and some creatures. And yeah, it was a really nice cast of supporting characters as well. It was really fun and cozy without being boring. And then the last book that I finished at the point of recording was the next book in the Famous 5 series. If this is your first video of mine that you've watched, you may not know that when my husband and I got married, we asked our guests to give us a copy of their favourite book, and in an endeavour to read them all, I set up a book club, as much as you can set up a book club between 2 people, and then we take it in turns each month to choose a book, and generally I read it and he doesn't, except my mum gave us a box set of Famous 5 books, and rather than reading 10 Famous 5 books back to back, I've given myself the subsidiary challenge of, alongside the book club book, I will also be reading 1 Famous 5 book per month, and this was the book for October. This is 5 Fall Into Adventure. I co-read this by listening to the audiobook on Spotify, but because it's designed for children, it's read really slowly, so I can speed it up. I think I ended up on like 2.2 times speed, so rather than it taking the 4.5 hours of the entire audiobook, I managed to listen to it in just over 2. So I binge read the whole thing, and it was definitely the way to go, because this is the 9th book in the series and I can tell I'm definitely getting tired of it. I rated it 3 stars. It was fine. I enjoyed it as much as an adult can enjoy a children's book from the 1940s. I've only got 1 left and I'm thoroughly excited about that. So those are the 6 books that I finished as of the 27th, which is the day of recording. And I'm going to briefly talk you through 2 of the 3 books I'm also currently reading, because there is a chance that I will finish them. The 3rd book is my book club pick for the month, and that is Myths and Legends by Philip Wilkinson. This is a non-fiction book and it is hefty. You know, it's got lots of pictures, it's beautifully illustrated, I'm enjoying reading it, but the font is so small and it makes me fall asleep every time I read it, so I don't think I'll be finishing that by the end of the month. But the other 2 books that I am currently reading are the sequel to Can't Spell Treason Without Tea. Let me just put the dust jacket back on for your entertainment. A Pirate's Life for Tea by Rebecca Thorne, the 2nd book in the Tomes and Tea series. This follows the same 2 main characters, but I think it's like 6 months later or something. I think they said it's 2 seasons later. I am currently 114 pages into this 360 something page book, but I'm hoping to finish this by Thursday. At this point, again, I'd be tempted to rate it maybe 3.5, 3 stars, just because I feel like the main characters from the first book, not more secondary, but I don't think they're the focus of the story as much, and as I feel happens in many sequels, they've kind of been reduced to stereotypes. Like the mage Kianth is essentially just someone who doesn't take anything seriously, is obsessed with her fiance and makes puns all the time, and it's a little bit cringy, but I'm hoping that there's some time for the characterization to be clawed back, currently somewhere between 3 and 3.5, but I am only 30% of the way through, so it could all change. Who knows? And then last but by no means least, I am listening to the audiobook for Powerless by Lauren Roberts. I know I'm super late to this, and I really didn't want to like this because I've seen so many conflicting opinions and quite a lot of criticism saying it's not particularly original, and I totally stand by that. Having read, I think I'm 37% of the way through this. I've got 7.5 hours of the audiobook left, listening at 1.5 speed, and it's very, very Hunger Games. It feels very stereotypical of a lot of the kind of dystopian, borderline fantasy series that were really popular in the 2010s, but I also kind of love it. I'm kind of having a really good time. At the moment I'm thinking somewhere between 3.5 and 4 stars. It really does depend how it ends. Reluctantly, I am actually having quite a good time with this, and even though it is long and the font is tiny, the audiobook is really well paced and it feels like it's going by really, really quickly. So I'm hoping I'll be able to finish this one by the end of the month. I'm more confident in finishing this than I am in finishing this, but optimistically maybe I'll be able to finish both. So let's pretend I finished both of those books and say that I've finished 8 books this month. We're very close to actually finishing one of my monthly TBRs. I think I'm posting this video before the end of the month as well, so perhaps I'll have to mention it in the beginning of next video whether I actually finish these books and how much I actually get through. But that is my October wrap up, filmed a little bit early, so not particularly accurate. Thank you so much for watching. Please tell me about the books you've read this month in the comments. I hope you're having a great day, I hope you're reading a great book, and I'll see you next time for another bookish video. Bye!